Okay, this is a 1920s Hope Chest made by Cavalier. This is actually going to be a proper antique restoration. We're not stripping finishes or doing anything crazy, but this piece does have some pretty significant issues. Right here you can see along the back we've got one of the pieces of cedar is splitting. It has split nearly to the halfway point on this side and on that side as well. When it was originally constructed, it was common for Cavalier to put in these bits of brass bracing, but I'm afraid that what's happened, you know, probably from the day it was constructed, this screw essentially tapped into a weak part of the wood and began pushing it apart. Add to that the hinge and the weight of the top, which I'll talk about in a minute, has basically just exacerbated this over the years. It's likely that if it had more use, like if it were a daily piece of furniture that somebody interacted with, this entire section would have broken off a long time ago. So this is going to need special attention. I have a couple of plans in mind, but not totally sure what we're going to need to do exactly yet. I imagine that we're going to have to basically put an engraving piece across, which I'll do with another piece of cedar, which means routing this whole section down, you know, half an inch or so, and then gluing in a new piece to strengthen this. Additionally, this joint is separating here, which you can tell this is a factory style joint. We're going to have to address this. At some point, somebody decided to put a nail through it, which I can't advise against this enough. And it's caused this back panel to split out. So we actually have separation here and here that we need to address. So this is the main concern. However, there are other things that we're going to address on the cabinet as a whole. So I'll kind of take you through some of those. Let's talk about the lid. It's really interesting seeing what factories choose to do. Now, the case itself is built out of a very light wood. It's built out of aromatic cedar. The lid it appears to be a piece of cherry, or several pieces of laminated cherry here. It's very heavy compared to the rest of the piece. I would say that this is probably 25% of the overall weight. It's just in this lid. This is causing some of the issues. We're not really going to fix that. We're not going to replace the lid. It's going to continue to exist, but we've got to find a way for these two things to live long-term together, which may mean adding a couple of pieces of brass in the back so that the hinges connect to the brass and the brass is connected to the wood and the hinges aren't directly connected, but we'll see. I'm just not sure about that yet. Now, the other thing that's interesting about this top, you can see it's made from laminated pieces of unfinished cherry on this side, and on this side we have a cherry top, but it's not the same top as below. This is veneer on the top, and we do have a couple of minor veneer repairs to take care of. So it's just interesting. It's always interesting to see a solid piece of wood or a solid laminated solid wood that is then topped with laminated veneer. It's not necessarily the wrong choice, it's just interesting. So Cavalier made a lot of furniture in the 1920s, a lot of Hope chests. And this is just one style. I haven't been able to pinpoint the exact year yet, but I'm going to guess 1922, 1924, so that would make this about 100 years old, which it's in great condition for the age. And all we're going to do is just do some light touch-ups to the outside and take care of a few issues. Got the top removed, and I'm going to start by taking this out. Go. You can really see here where the brass screws contributed to this damage. This is really just a testament to the wood. There's nothing wrong with cedar. It is a very soft wood structurally. It's not super duper. But you can even see here where it sort of picked up on the natural split in the wood and carried it on. It even came up over, I'll show you here. This is really interesting. It came up over the knot. So, and then you can see how it's traced across here. Sort of ends about right there. And then on the other side, you get essentially the same situation where your screw opened up the crack, and then it even dropped down below this knot. So, yeah. Essentially, I think the fix is going to go like this. We've got to address the internal points of these joints, which, you know, that's not a big deal at this moment. Mainly, we have to stabilize this back. The last thing that I want to do, and I think the last good thing for this chest as a whole, would be for me to remove the entire back. I don't think that would actually solve the problem. Taking this piece and re-gluing it, putting in clamps, and then putting it back on here, it's just not going to solve the problem. So the best bet is to actually take from this corner here and across to this corner here, and mark out a section and essentially put a graving piece of aromatic cedar there to cover up this broken section. It'll actually leave the original back in place when we do that. The only thing it's going to change is this section right here across here. We'll glue that in. Probably only have to go in 1/4 of an inch. It's going to do two things. It's going to stabilize the rest of these pieces from behind, and they'll remain here. But it'll stabilize these cracks, stabilize this face, and keep the damage from persisting. Okay, so this repair turned out pretty okay. There's a couple of things I'm not totally happy with, but it's just the nature of cedar. Got a little bit of tear out over here. I will repair that. And, just routing it out and then planing it flat. There's a little bit of tear out in a couple other areas. Nothing too major. There's a spot right down here that I'm not totally happy with, but all in all, it's pretty great. We'll clean up those spots and we'll move forward with the other repairs. So because of the nature of the damage that was going across here, the cracking had actually gone deep into this joint. Now there's really no way that we're going to open up this joint and fix that from within. So this little bit of tear out here that happened when we were doing this repair is actually kind of lucky because that's going to allow us to get some epoxy putty down into that joint, which is going to further strengthen that, and it'll fill in some of this area and make sure that we don't have any further cracking or tear out that happens behind this, hopefully. And then we'll clean up the surface with a little bit of regular putty. The reason why this is really so important is because this is where that brass elbow sits. And, because of the screws that are going to be going in here and all of the previous damage, reinforcing this area with epoxy putty is really going to be the best way to ensure that this whole fix lasts. So there are several spots like this throughout the piece where the shellac has worn away and some of the original toner has rubbed away. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply a little bit of water-based dye stain to this and then seal it with some shellac. Okay, if you recall, both corners had nails in them, and these need to be drawn back together with glue. And since we've got the graving piece on the inside now, that should stabilize all the cracking, but it's going to be important to go ahead and repair this crack on the back and reseal this joint. I've got some hide glue that has been heating up for this, and I'm actually going to use that, and we'll get that as far down into these corner joints as possible, seal up these and draw them together with a clamp, and then address some of this cracking along the back. Even if we're just getting glue up in there, it's going to help stabilize everything. And the hide glue is great because it's easily washed off the surface. So. have it a 1920's Hope Chest, blanket chest, and we did a little bit of repair to some dings and some minor abrasions. And we did one major repair on the back. I think it turned out pretty great.